we were talking about the whole "it's over" crowd, and here is one of, not the only, but one of the reasons why. Kirk Lacob, big part of the Warriors front office, obviously, and he was on with Steiny and Goo, and this is one of the things that he wanted to discuss, whether or not the dynasty is, quote, over.
Everyone wants to say a dynasty is dead. The reality is your story is not done until it's done. There have been lots of cases where a team takes a couple years and doesn't win. You can't win every year. We tried to do that. We came close. But realistically, you can't win every single year. But just because you don't win one year doesn't mean you can't retool, get better, come back. I mean, we've done it once already. And I know people want to, put the nail in the coffin right now and say, no, this time it's over. This time they're done. Right. We don't believe that. We believe we can still get at least one more with the current group. And then, why would we stop just because some players retire or something? We still are going to try to win a championship. It gets harder when you don't have Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson. It definitely gets harder. But that's always the goal. I just think it's very easy to write a team. And I would do the same thing, by the way. We do the same thing. Every time a team loses, they're done. Next summer's going to be impossible for them. And look, people probably said that about Boston. Said, oh, that was their one chance. They didn't do it. And look at what they did. So it's on us to get better, but by no means do we think the dynasty is over. You don't get to say these are the years of a dynasty until 10 or 15 years later. Right. And so to us, we're still in it, and we're going to try to win the championship this year, next year, and the year after.
I do know that I said these things. It's so much easier when you're looking at it and your heart's not involved. San Antonio Spurs, New England Patriots, both of those lasted longer than I thought they would. There were years where I'm like, that's probably it. That's a wrap. And then it was like, oh, no, I guess not. Guess they're still playing. And then we did it. You mentioned this earlier. We did it as a society very much to Tom Brady as an individual.
Yep.
He had a down year. Jimmy Garoppolo takes the 49ers to the Super Bowl. And the 49ers passed on the idea of going after Tom Brady, and they kept Jimmy Garoppolo, and I was firmly in favor of that, and Tom Brady went out and won the Super Bowl the next year in a different uniform. So I think as a fan, all you really need to know is what the Warriors are thinking, and he said it. We believe we can win at least one more with these people as our core. So there's your baseline for how they're going to conduct themselves. And you're obviously welcome to disagree with that, but that's my question. It's not just to get into a fun debate of words with my partner here. My question truly is, if you believe that this is over, and my definition of that is there's no chance, there's no path to be a contender in the near term. If that's what you believe, how would you like the Warriors to conduct themselves? And I guess I can't do this. It's probably not fair, but I'd like to remove from the conversation the idea of trading Steph Curry, because that has such a ripple effect through so many different avenues of the organization, much bigger than basketball. It's so out of the realm of possibility.
It is, but I do think for fans, if you want to ask people how they should proceed, that is what some people think.
Sure.
Because if you really are of the mind that it's over, and I believe that it's over, but the one caveat for me is if you do something dramatic now, or maybe at the trade deadline next year, and you bring in a real star or a real number two, and if you make this roster somehow better in the short term, yeah, there's a chance. So I'm of the mind that, yes, it's over, but I'm not of the mind that it's over, blow it up, trade Steph, trade Draymond, get picks, go the OKC route, go the San Antonio route, and we'll see you in 2030. That, to me, is an unreasonable way to go about it because the owner, he's not going to do that. So even
But would you do it if you were the owner?
No.
Okay.
Of course not. What I would do would be try to get better in the margins. If you can make a big swing and bring in a big fish, you do that. But other than that, you've got the most popular player in the sport right now, and you've got the singular money-making force that you've ever had in your organization, and you've gone from a team that you bought for about $400 million, and it's now worth $5 or $6 billion, $7 billion, whatever the billions are that you could get to sell it. You've already made a ton of money for everyone, but you don't then take your cash cow and just trade him to try again in 5 years.
I mean, I like one thing that like I try to do, especially this time of year. I understand that the West has good teams, and I understand that there's no scenario by which the West won't have good teams in October. But there's so many things that are about to happen that haven't happened yet that we don't even know about. It's funny to me that we sit there and go, "Well, the Warriors, you're not going to be good enough to compete in this stacked West." You know, Bob Myers even did it yesterday. You know, he said on a public platform they could get Paul George and bring Klay Thompson back, and I still think they need more. And that's a fair opinion. However, it's not just as simple as what you said a couple minutes ago when you joked that 13 players could tear their ACL. Like, what if Kevin Durant is traded? What if there is an injury? What if Dallas is going to do the championship loss hangover thing? What if Denver's seeming lack of motivation really kind of takes hold of that organization? What if Karl Anthony Towns is dealt? Certainly, like, was a thought prior to the playoffs unfolding. It's funny to me that we sit here, not even July yet, and think we've got a bead on how this is all laid out and where the Warriors sit in it. We don't even know who's on what team right now.
Right.
How can we have an opinion about what is and isn't over? Or how about if I say it a different way? What is and what isn't possible? Don't you have to, like, that's what the offseason is. It's hope. It's hope. It's like, it's just try. It's effort. It's do this. It's do that. It's try to get better and see how the deck shuffles, isn't it?
It is, but you look at their constraints with an organization where you've got certain pieces that are going to be tough to move, and you've got certain constructs that are already in place, and you don't have the ability to go out there and really get a free agent. You don't have the budget to bring in a big free agent. So now it's a sign and trade, or it's a trade that you have to, part with assets. And so the big assets that everybody seems to want is a guy you don't want to trade, and the rest of it is just bench pieces and an expiring contract. So we can talk about the what if, and we can all, go pie in the sky about, Chris Paul and that $30 million contract. That's got to be attractive to somebody. Well, is it? You can think that it is, but until somebody wants to bring that on, really, it's a 39-year-old with a $30 million contract that is either valuable to somebody or not valuable. And beyond that, Klay's going to leave. And beyond that, you got Kuminga, who you don't want to trade. And beyond that, you got picks in the future that aren't as valuable as many people think. And you look at what Brooklyn was able to get for Mikal Bridges, and they got, 4 first-round picks and a pick swap.
They got a bunch of stuff, yeah.
Right. So
yep.
I do think that the amount of picks necessary to make even a medium to a medium big deal, you're talking about a lot of picks. And so we can all play amateur GM, and we can dream about a Chris Paul sign and trade, and we can talk about all these things. But the reality is, making trades is hard in the NBA, Mark.
I don't really think that it is, actually. I reject that statement that Mike Dunleavy made last week or this week.
I take him at his word.
Well,
he's a pro.
I'm not saying that they're easy, but a bunch of them happen every offseason. So they're very doable. And I'd also pause before comparing the Mikal Bridges deal to any of these other deals, because that's very, very different. Brooklyn was in a position where they didn't have to deal him. Brooklyn was in a position where Bridges had no power over where he went. Brooklyn is not in a position where anybody gives a rip how many games they win next year. When you start talking about people like Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, or whoever else may be involved here, you're talking about a different level of player that is a veteran, that has a lot of say potentially over where he goes. If you're a Paul George, for example, if you're a Jimmy Butler and you have a contract coming up really soon, and you're dealing with teams that have gone so all in financially, Clippers, Phoenix Suns, etc., so all in financially that finances rather than assets, I think, are just higher up on the pecking order of what they want to get done with a deal. The Clippers do not want to trade Paul George. The Clippers would like to sign Paul George for less years than Paul George wants. So the Clippers are not in a situation of like, let's go out there and just completely grab someone's assets for well into the future, and they'll trade us that for Paul George. I don't believe. I believe that if they trade Paul George, it's because they have to. Paul's going to have a lot of say over where he ends up, and the Clippers, in fact, if they weren't worried about money, they'd have signed him already themselves. He's a very good basketball player. They're obviously better with him. So I don't know if the Mikal Bridges deal has anything to do with how some of these other deals may end up looking.
I just think the price that they were able to get from Mikal Bridges becomes part of the template of what we're talking about. And if you're the Clippers and you have Paul George and it gets closer to July 1 and it feels more likely that he's going to get dealt, I do think that the price is going to be higher than what you and many other people think just based on the competition therein. And I do have both eyes on the Chris Paul contract because when that needs to be guaranteed, and I think that's on Saturday, right? The 29th is when the Chris Paul...
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
The 28th.
Tomorrow.
Okay, so by tomorrow, we will know if the Chris Paul contract is live in the trade game.
Unless they agree to push it back, which they said they were talking about.
Which we'll find out tomorrow as well.
Yes, we'll find out something
And
tomorrow.
if I'm Chris Paul, I wonder if he would be motivated to allow that deadline to get pushed back.
I don't know why he would, although unless there's something to sweeten it for him.
Right, unless there's already a deal like, hey, if you can just push it back for 2 more days, we're pretty sure you're going to be able to go to the Clippers and they're going to pick up, at least your $5 million and then you're free to go and sign with them. Or I don't know what that would mean for Chris Paul. Like, what's in it for him other than, maybe doing the Warriors a solid, which I don't know. We talked about this yesterday. Why would any player want to do their team a solid, especially after Chris Paul being here for 1 year?
Well, I mean, if it's not causing them any problem, again,
Sure.
I think that, I don't know what Chris's goals are. I've heard L.A. I think they're talking about the Lakers, not the Clippers, but I've heard that that's where he wants to end up. I don't know that. If that is where he wants to end up, I would argue that Chris would be open to doing anything if it helps the Warriors, fine, as long as it helps Chris along to his goal. So I don't know how that's all going to shake out. Along the lines of what you're talking about, more from Kirk Lacob, he talked about the challenges that currently sit in front of the Warriors with regard to maximizing the remainder of Steph Curry's career.
We have to make sure that we have a chance to be good as long as we can, but you also want the best team you can right now, always. And I think, especially when you've got a guy of his caliber, and when you think you've got a chance to win, you got to go for it. It also matters, what can you get, what's out there. That impacts how aggressive you can be in any situation. Or maybe I don't want to say aggressive because you can be really aggressive and still not be able to get things done. Sometimes you can be really aggressive and get a lot of stuff done. So, no, I think the most important thing is that we want to try to have the best team we can now. That's extremely important, especially when we think there's a window to win a championship. That comes first. But you also want to make sure that, you don't make a move that improves you but doesn't improve you enough. And then you're out the opportunity to get even better. But that's the tricky part, frankly, is balancing how good can we get right now and how much can we leave to make sure we can get even better. That's the part the market decides that, to be honest, and other teams.
Yeah, I mean, present and future. It's funny. We sort of, I feel like that got too hot to touch for a second because people got triggered by the moniker 2 timelines. And then we got to the point where we're like, well, that doesn't work. And I largely agree with that if what you're saying is we're going to be champions and then all our good players are going to leave and we're going to just immediately be champions again. Like, you don't know when people are 21 and 22 years old. You can see if they're good. I don't know if you can see whether or not they're championship core players. That's a totally different level, obviously. You can see someone who's like, oh, he can score 20 points a game. That, to me, has nothing to do with whether or not that's a championship level core player.
You could say his name.
What, Jordan Poole?
Thank you.
Sure, I'll give you 1,000 examples.
No,
but that's a great example.
2 timelines would have worked if James Wiseman wasn't a bust and if Jordan Poole didn't go the way that Jordan Poole went.
So
and I'm not blaming Jordan Poole exclusively.
No, but what you're saying is 2 timelines would have worked if Jordan Poole and James Wiseman were championship level core players, which is the most special
not
thing
even
ever.
Championship core players. If James Wiseman would have been an actual NBA player, you could have had him be really, really good in 2027 as a 25-year-old.
But that doesn't mean you'd still be championship level caliber team.
No, but you didn't even need James Wiseman when you won a championship.
I get what you're saying.
Point,
yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm just everybody's got a good player. Everybody's got a good player.
But two timelines would have worked if, James Wiseman if he was an actual serviceable, good 7'1" player, then two timelines actually probably would have been a thing.
Maybe. Yeah. The second timeline would still be very TBD.
It'd be years away, exactly.
So people get sort of knocked off kilter, I think, by that idea, but it is true. What Kirk is saying is nothing's ever over. We're going to try to be good now, and when these players that we're talking about now aren't here, we're going to try to be good then, which means we've got to try to be good without just completely ignoring our young players, but we're also not going to make it all about them. It's kind of been this is my whatever. Who cares? I don't know if anybody does, but my message for the week is you don't need this declaration of now or future. It feels to me like so many fans are like either we win this year or we say bleep it and we just turn everything over to the young guys and build for the future. You don't need to do that.
Well, you can't do that in this city and with this ownership and this franchise. Point. You can't do that. And if you were another team in another city, yeah, you try to do that. And San Antonio has tried to do that because you got to a point where even after Manu and Tony and Tim were gone, you had Kawhi and you got that last one, and that was a surprise. And then Kawhi did what he did, and he, chose to go rehab elsewhere. And you had other players, DeMar DeRozan, you traded him, and you started getting rid of all your veterans. LaMarcus Aldridge was gone, and they tried to turn the thing over. And here we are 5 years later, and they were 20-62 this year, or 22-60. I can't remember which one, but they were terrible. And so the Warriors will never go that direction because Joe Lacob already said, our goal is to never be in the lottery.
Thank God.
And you've been in the lottery once already.
Thank God.
Since he said that. You're 1 for 1.
So nothing ever ends. The question we're heading to is how do you want the Warriors to conduct themselves? I mean, that's what matters. What do you want them to do? You want to sit in a barbershop and scream about whether it's over or it's not over? Doesn't matter. The season's going to happen.
Right.
What do you want them to try to do? Do you want them to try to be a very good basketball team this year, or do you want to just give up on that idea entirely because you think that holds some sort of value down the road? You can weigh in on that.